In today's video, we're talking progress and plateaus. Welcome to the video, guys. My name is Tyler, also known as the Fit Chemist, and I help people take control of their lives by taking control of their fitness and nutrition habits. So if that's something that interests you, please hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bells on so you do not miss when I'm posting a video. But ultimately, my goal is to help everyone live a healthier, happier life. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome back. Today is going to be part 6 of our How to Diet series. Up until this point, we've pretty much covered all of the theory behind fat loss and how to do it, but we haven't actually talked about how you put that into practice. So that's exactly what I want to do today. I want to talk about how to measure progress and what to do if your weight loss stalls or if you plateau. So with that, let's start with some ways to measure progress. Measuring your weight is arguably the most important indicator when you're doing weight loss. It's the most reliable and the most accurate data that you can look at. So remember, you have to do this right after you wake up, after using the bathroom, and before you eat or drink anything. Because if you weigh in Monday morning, say you do it that way, Tuesday you weigh in after lunch, and then Wednesday, let's say you go to the gym and you weigh in after dinner, like you're gonna have different amounts of food and liquid in your system, and those are not gonna be reliable data points to compare. So just do it first thing every morning, after using the bathroom, and before drinking or eating anything. I also understand that some people do have scale anxiety. That's a very real issue, and I have some tips for you, but I also want to reframe your perspective, and I think you'll agree that it sounds kind of silly once you hear my analogy. When you step on the scale, you are measuring your gravitational pull towards Earth. That is not measuring your life worth. That does not determine who you are as a person, how you treat others, or anything like that. So please do not look at it that way. It is literally just collecting data. But also, if you are someone who has scale weight anxiety, I did want to provide a tip for you. What you can do is step on the scale, maybe close your eyes and take a picture with your smartphone, or if you live with a partner or a friend, when you step on the scale, face the other way so you can't see the number readout and have them take the picture for you. And that brings me to my next point, because getting a weekly average is way more important than just weighing in once or twice per week. Again, weighing in is data. The more data you have, the more accurately you can measure your progress. So I have an example for you guys. Let's say we start with week 1, our average is 182.7, and then we go through another week of fat loss and our average is 182.0. So we just lost 0.7 pounds. That's awesome. That is progress. If you're losing any amount of weight, that is progress. But let's say those 2 weeks, instead of weighing in every single day, you decide to weigh in on Friday of both weeks. And you actually, if that's all you measured, then you would have gained 1.3 pounds according to the scale. And that's where most people give up. They think that, I just gained 1.3 pounds, this isn't working for me anymore. And that's totally not the case. So please, if you can, weigh in every single day. It will give you the most data, and it's the most reliable way to track your progress. Point number 2 is going to be measuring our body fat, and there are 2 ways that I like to do this. One is using something like this. These are called calipers, and what you use them for is just measuring skin folds. So I would measure something like my chest, maybe my lower abdomen, thigh, different areas on your body that you can access, of course. I'll link in the description down below. There's a website that you can basically go in and just enter your skin fold measurements, and it will calculate body fat percentage for you. Or an alternative option would just be using something like a smart scale. So I'll also link the scale that I use down below. I think it was like $20 or $25 on Amazon, and it measures obviously your body weight, body fat percentage, and maybe like 15 other things that I don't really pay attention to, but that's besides the point, right? So we want to get our body fat measurement. I will say, whatever you do, pick something and be consistent with it, because during my contest prep, I was using these calipers and it was telling me that I was 12% body fat. And if you look at the photos, there is no way I was 12% body fat. I was stage lean, which is anywhere between 3 to 5% body fat. So I actually went into Boston University's Fitness and Recreation Center. Shout out to my friend Ben, but they've actually got professional calipers that he used. That measured me at like 3.5% body fat. And I also got an in-body scan, and that was like 4% body fat. So whichever way that you pick is going to be inaccurate in terms of absolute numbers. But if I started my contest prep at 17% body fat with these calipers and I got down to 12% with these calipers, I know that I lost 5% body fat. It's the same thing if I picked the in-body scan and let's say I started at 9% body fat and then at the end of my prep I was down to 4% body fat. Even though those two absolute numbers are different, you can still bet that I lost 5% body fat. So just pick something and be consistent with it. I do also want to point out, if you are using something like these calipers, to use the rule of 3. So you would basically measure 3 times and take the average of that. So let's say I was measuring my chest skin fold and I get 16, 15, and 14 millimeters as readouts. I would use 15 because that's the average. So that's a little more accurate to do it that way. Like, don't just measure once and take that for granted. So 3 measurements, average that, plug it into the website. Again, that's linked down below, and then you can get your body fat that way. So a third option would be taking measurements in terms of circumference. So let's say you just have a tape measure like this. You can do your neck, chest, hips, thighs, whatever measurements you want. In that link that I shared down below for the calipers, you can actually take measurements with this and then you can get your body fat percentage that way. But also just looking at the raw numbers, let's say you're doing like an abdomen measurement and you go from, I don't know, like 35 to 30 or something, like obviously that's progress, right? You're losing weight. I got both of these on Amazon for, I think it was like $8. So I'll link that below, but I'm sure most people have something like this laying around your house. It may not be nice and retractable, but I would be willing to bet most people have that in their household. The last tip I have for measuring progress is going to be taking subjective measurements. And honestly, I think this gets overlooked way too often, even though it's just as important as the hard data. So what I would suggest for this category is something like taking a progress photo, maybe every other week. I think every week is a little bit overkill. You're not going to see that much of a change, but if you want to do it, by all means, go for it. And then something else I like to do is answer these questions on a scale of 1 to 10. So I've taken these from Fat Loss Forever by Layne Norton. And of course, you can change the questions to whatever you like, but I like his questions. So they include, did I adhere to my macronutrient, training, and cardio? How was my energy this week? How was my strength in the gym? How are my hunger levels? Was I just like raiding the pantry every night or was I super stuffed? How was my mood and stress? How was I feeling during the week? How am I sleeping because of my mood? So again, feel free to come up with your own questions. I personally like those questions, so I use those, but I just want to reiterate, it's so important to focus on non-scale weight victories as well. So even if your weight isn't going down and all of these indicators, all of these subjective measurements are showing that you're progressing, that is still progress. So now that we know how to measure progress, I want to go ahead and switch gears for a second and talk about what to do if our weight loss stalls or if we plateau, because spoiler alert, it's probably going to happen. So many of you are thinking that weight loss is going to look something like this. In reality, it's going to look something like this. Right, so it's not a linear trend by any means. It's going to fluctuate from a day-to-day basis. Again, that's why it's so important to take weekly averages. And also, I'll put up a real example of me from my contest prep. So you can see I was sort of ending the diet and then I started my bulk season. And it's a nice V shape if you extrapolate sort of, but it's not, if you look at the day-to-day, it's just fluctuating all over the place. And that's just the reality of your weight. So you have to get used to that. So the reason that we stall out is because our bodies actually undergo what's called metabolic adaptation, which is the slowing of our metabolism. Our body becomes more efficient with calories as we are in a calorie deficit and as we lose more weight. It's a protective mechanism to basically keep you alive. So basically, let's say we're eating this many calories and this was our maintenance. So this area here would be our calorie deficit. Your metabolism starts to slow down until your calorie deficit is no longer a calorie deficit and you're eating at your new maintenance. Once that happens and we stall out, that's when we need to make change. But I will say, Layne recommends in his book, and I agree with it, you only need to make a change when 2 of those indicators have not progressed. So let's say your body fat percentage stayed the same or maybe even went up like 0.1%, but you lost weight, subjective measurements are good, and maybe your circumference measurements stayed the same or slightly went down. That is still progress, okay? If it's working, there's no need to fix it yet. And if you do make a change, I do want to say you need to make small changes, because remember, the name of the game is slow and steady. So you might be wondering, if I plateau, what do I do? How do I start losing weight again? Well, if you've been following the other videos, you might have an educated guess. We need to create a calorie deficit, and there are two ways that we can do that. One is going to be through nutrition, and the other one is going to be through exercise. So you can, create a calorie deficit by eating less calories than you previously were, or you can create the calorie deficit by adding more exercise activity. If you do start with nutrition, I would say maybe a 5% reduction in calories. That should be good. If it's not, then you can maybe bump it up to like 7.5 or maybe 10%. And what I would say is take these calories away from carbs and fats. You've already set your protein in the macros video. There's no need to change your protein. Protein demands, if you remember, in a calorie deficit actually go up. So if anything, you should actually increase your protein. But I would say just leave it where it is. Take the calorie reductions from carbs and fats. Start slow. Record what adjustments you're making. So if you make a 5% reduction and that's enough, then good. The next time you stall out, you know that all you need to do is a 5% reduction. Let's say you have to do a 10% reduction though. Make a note of that, because the next time you stall out, you know that you need to make a 10% reduction. I would say that's kind of a lot though. Honestly, I was looking back at my old contest prep data, and I was eating like 34 to 3,300 calories every day. When I would stall, I'd maybe drop it 100 calories, so that's about 3%. So again, just really start small, because remember, our metabolism slows down to this point. If you drop your calories even further, your metabolism is just going to slow down to that point, and eventually you're going to get to a point where you can't drop calories any further. Like if you're eating 800 calories, if you eat less than that, you're going to be starving yourself, so your diet will be over. So small changes. If you choose to do it with exercise, you can try maybe anywhere between a 10 to 20% increase. So let's say you're doing 100 minutes of low intensity steady state. Maybe you change that to 110 or 120 minutes and see if that's enough. Or of course, you can also do a small combination of both. I really cannot stress it enough. Just start slow, make the smallest change you can. If nothing happens, then make another small change. There's no reason to add, double your cardio. Like that, why would you do that? Because then for the rest of your diet, you're gonna have to do double the cardio. And then when you stall again, you're gonna have to increase that even more. It's like, trust me, you don't wanna fall into that trap. So going off of Layne's recommendations, he says if you reduce your calories by 15% and you also increase your cardio by 10 to 20% and you're still not seeing a change, then unfortunately it is time to call it quits on the diet. Your body, your metabolism is just slowed down to a point where it's defending against itself. It literally thinks that you are starving it. But don't worry, what to do after that is called a reverse diet. That's something that I will cover in a future video, but essentially what you're doing is you would make small increases to your calories to try and minimize fat gain and basically bring your metabolism back up to a point where you can eat in a healthy calorie deficit. Because like I said, you can drop calories so far, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you can't drop them anymore. And if you do reach that point, it's unfortunate, but you have to call it quits. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. I would really appreciate it. And again, if you are someone who just enjoys taking control of every aspect of their life, and we're going to start that with fitness and nutrition habits, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bells on so you don't miss a video I post. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.